Okay, I've just loaded in a quick scene, just pretty much the same thing we had before, except these are particle emitters, so they'll show up if we render. Go to the render tab and click render frame, and as you can see, those particles now show up. And now the best way to make a firework out of this is just to apply kind of a glow effect to it. So we're going to open up that surface editor, and as you can see, for each we have the main, and then emitter is pretty much the trail that we just had. So we could actually add, if we take our main particons and we can make that sort of a bright white texture, and then up the luminosity to 100, and go to advanced glow intensity 100%. And then if we go to our trail object, we can change the color of that, let's say to sort of a orangish color. And then what we also want to do is kind of add like a fractal to that. So we'll go to the texture editor and we'll procedural texture, and we're just going to use a standard turbulence, which we have right here, and we can change that to sort of a red or reddish orange color, and the size that we have on that should be fine. We can just use the texture, and then we're going to up our luminosity to 100% on that. We can leave our diffuse at 100% where it's at. We don't need any specularity, and we can also go to advanced now, and our glow intensity, we want this to be a little less than our main balls that we're going to have in front, which are those main particles, which have the 100% glow intensity. So we'll make our glow intensity to this 50%. And now the next thing we want to do is we actually have to physically add glow intensity to the scene. So I'm going to close out our surface editor, hit Control F8, and that's going to bring up our effects processing. Just click Enable Glow. We'll make our intensity 75 and our glow radius 13. And then if we render this now, you can see it adds that nice glow to it. Of course, right now we could probably up that glow intensity to a lot higher, but you can see these main red spheres are obviously a lot bigger. So we'll close that. We'll up our intensity to maybe 150 with a glow radius of 13, should still be fine. And now we'll go ahead and just render that frame. You can use F9, or you can use the render tab and then click render frame. And then that'll pop up and we can render that. And as you can see, that's a lot brighter. And that'll give you kind of a neat little firework effect if you want to render it quickly without having to use hypervoxels. There's also another great method about this, is you can do motion blur or particle blur with this, and you don't need as many passes when you're rendering to get particle blur. So we're going to open up the properties for the camera panel, and under particle blur, check it on. We can change this to actually just 65%, should be fine. And if we render that now, you'll see a nice, we'll be getting kind of streaks from each one of the particles. And you can see there's little streaks right there. Of course, with something like this, you might want to up it even higher. And if you look right now in the scene, if we go to our perspective view, you can see that we have a yellowish look, and that's the color of the particle. And then we have this blue kind of line, or actually we have orange lines behind it with a blue main particle. Turn that off. Go ahead and select that, center it, and reselect the camera. And those lines are your particle blur. So it's kind of a layout preview before you render. So we could, if we want, we could up it a little higher, and I can show you how that makes the change. Oh, accidentally opened preferences. P for under the camera with it selected, and if we change our blur length to something, let's say like 250, and we close that out, and we'll take a look here. We'll move our slider so that it updates. You can see that now we have our 200 particle blur length on there, and it's all previewed in layout in our view without having to render. And there's one other thing too, is we can actually adjust the render size of our particles. So if I open the Objects panel and we go to Edges, there's a option here called Particle / Line Thickness. And what we could do there is we can grab our main emitter and we can make the particle line thickness for that 3 pixels. And then we could go into our main emitter and actually keep it at 1 pixel. And now if we render, you'll see that we're going to have 3 pixels for the main objects right here, and then 1 pixel for the other ones. And as you can see, they're much larger now. So you can do a lot more effects with that. And as you can see, that larger particle blur looks real nice in there. We could up the glow intensity if we wanted, or increase the luminosity of that. Because once you start using particle blur, it'll also kind of dampen the luminosity value just because it's being blurred out. So you might want to increase your luminosity values at that point. But that's just a neat little way to create a quick firework using the same method that we just used to create the Pyroclastic firework. And I just thought I'd show you that because it's a real neat little trick. And what you could also do is you could just have, you could create one particle kind of shooting up in the air, and then, or one emitter kind of shooting up in the air, shooting sparks out of it as if a firework is about to shoot up in the air. And then you could set this to a fixed rate. Actually, I could show you that right now, just how to set that to a fixed rate. Grab that main emitter, and we'll open up the objects properties for it. Go to Dynamics, double-click on the emitter, go to Fixed, and let's say we set that to 30. And what that's going to do is start creating our firework at frame 30. So we could add another emitter right now. I'm not going to do it right now, but you could add an emitter to kind of shoot up into the air up to that point and then have that explode. And you'd get a real nice firework out of that. Okay, and that's it for this chapter. And now we can move on to the next.